Good morning, Shavua Tov, and welcome to our Sunday morning Parsha class, the Parsha of Ki Setzei in the book of Devarim. Good to see you all. See Chaim on our coffee. So the Parsha of Ki Setzei is another very filled Parsha with many, what seems to be, independent ideas and many laws and many mitzvot, which we kind of said already last week, where we kind of shifted a little bit from Moshe in Moshe's talk, where he repeats to the Jewish people a lot that went on over the last 40 years, and he encourages them to stay strong in their faith in God as they go into Israel. So the first few parshas is very much like almost like a pep talk, and then already in last week's parsha, this week's parsha, we go into some more detailed of mitzvot that, for whatever reason, were not mentioned previously in the Torah and are mentioned over here. So the parsha of Ki Setzei begins with what happens when you go out to war, laws of a Eshet Yefas Tohar, when someone sees a beautiful woman and takes her a captive in war. It talks about the rights of the firstborn, the rebellion son, so many other mitzvot in this parsha. But I want to focus, we have the laws of shatnez, not mixing wool and linen in our clothing. I want to focus on a little bit, was the end of the parsha on page 1282. So if you have a different chumash, we're chapter 24 in Deuteronomy, chapter 24. We're going to be focusing on verse 5. One verse, for verse 5. So the Torah over here introduces the mitzvah of divorcing a wife, which is a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah which I hope many of us never have to fulfill. But I think other years we discussed the beauty of this mitzvah. We actually learn the laws of marriage out of the laws of divorce. We learn how to get married according to Jewish law. And there's a lot to be said about this idea of knowing that there's an option of divorce and what the significance of it is, etc. But I don't want to speak about that today. I want to speak about the next verse, verse 5, which talks about this beautiful, beautiful mitzvah. And I would say, honestly, that it's one of the, for some reason, unknown mitzvahs. It's a mitzvah which I believe is counted in part of the 613 commandments. It's one of the Taryag mitzvot. For whatever reason, it did not make it into the code of Jewish law. It did not make it into the Shulchan Aruch. But the Maimonides speaks about it in his book of laws. And the book of Chinuch, the Sefer Chinuch, also mentions it. It's a mitzvah. I think it's one of the most beautiful mitzvahs, if you're allowed to say so. It's the mitzvah of newlyweds, the first year of marriage. For the first year of marriage, we are told this is the time to hang out together. This is the time to block out everything else. There's no business trips. There's no important things out of leaving town. We're going to spend our time together for the first 12 months. Very often, and I used to say this with my friends, as we were a class, close friends, and as each one started getting married, and we all got married within a year or two, I would say 80% of the class got married. Well, it was always like, oh, he got married, he kind of fell off the grid. Suddenly, doesn't answer our phone calls. Suddenly, he's not hanging out with us. Suddenly, he doesn't, right? That makes sense, right? He's married, so he's a little bit a different stage in life. But it's almost like now, like you're in you're in your own little bubble now, and you forgot about everything else. So obviously, we need a good balance. But there's truth to that. There is this idea that for the first year, we should be fully focused on our spouses. So let's first read this inside, and then we'll kind of discuss this in greater length. So we're going to be verse 5 in the English, where it says newlyweds, in Hebrew, towards the bottom of the page, right at the beginning of the sixth reading. Ki yikach ish isha chadasha. When a man takes a new wife, or a wife who is new to him, lo yetzei batzava, v'lo yaver alav l'chol davar. He must not go out to war in the army, and no military duty may be imposed upon him. So what is this? What is the reference over here? The reference over here is this is a continuation to what we spoke about last week in last week's parsha. In last week's parsha, the parsha of Shoftim, we discussed the laws of war, where everyone had this duty to go out to fight. However, the Torah says that there are certain people that the Kohen would announce, these people, you go back home. And who were they? It was someone who built a house and hasn't really hasn't inaugurated it, so you go home. If someone built a vineyard, hasn't really finished appreciating it and using it, you're home. If someone gets engaged, if someone is engaged and hasn't been married yet, so that they also go home. And then someone who's afraid, someone who has sins, etc., etc. So these people were exempt from actually fighting in war. However, they had the responsibility to assist in other ways, maybe bringing food, maybe in other ways at home. You're not on the battlefield, but from back home, you still have this obligation to assist. In this week's parsha, we say, but who doesn't even have to assist? Someone who's totally exempt. The person who's totally exempt is the person who did get married within the first 12 months, within the first year. They are totally exempt from any military duties. And we learn from this that not only military, it says l'chol davar, for everything, that we are told that really a person should remain home with their spouse, and there isn't anything more important than spending time with their spouse. So traveling for business, traveling for another important whatever, a simcha. If you have to travel, what we're told is better to travel together. So you both travel. When I was married for the first 12 months, we really tried keeping this, and I believe we did this for the first 12 months, that we never were for a night out of town. Like we had to leave town, it was only during the day. And even I had a friend's wedding where I really didn't want to miss. So my wife came along with me. And the Chaimushka had a wedding that she did not want to miss, so we went together. So for the first 12 months, we were able to be together every single night. And that is a beautiful mitzvah from the Torah. Let's just continue with the second half of the verse. Naki yihi yalevei, so he must remain free for his own house, shana achos, for 1 year. V'simach es ishtoi asher lokach. Now these 5 words, v'simach es ishtoi asher lokach, as we know, every translation is an interpretation. So here is like a very, I think, a very beautiful way, 2 ways of how to understand these 5 words. And it's really one word that you could understand 2 different ways. V'simach, the word v'simach. What does v'simach mean? So the v'simach comes from the word simcha, right? What does simcha mean? Joy, happiness. Simcha Torah, right? Rejoice with the Torah. Simcha. V'simach means, and he should be happy or make happy. Es ishtoi, his wife, ashalaka, that he has taken. So what does this word v'simach? So here is interesting because we know that there were a few people who actually wrote a translation to the Torah, not a commentary per se, but a translation. Now, like I said, every translation is a commentary. So when you look at these people's translations, you actually understand the way they understood the interpretation of these words. So we're going to look at 2 ancient translations. One of them is called the Targum Yonatan, a man by the name Yonatan. Some people attribute it to the man by the name of Yonatan ben Uziel, who was a disciple of Hillel, the great sage Hillel. And he wrote a translation into like Hebrew/Aramaic. It's like a mixture. And then there's another translation, which is maybe a little bit more famous, known as Onkelos. Onkelos, who was a convert, and he wrote his translation to Aramaic as well, roughly, in the years like 200 or so. Yonatan ben Uziel, maybe his translation was a little bit later. It's unclear exactly when he wrote this translation. So, Wasav Yonatan ben Uziel. He says, "V'simach es ishtoi." You should rejoice. Your wife means you should rejoice with your wife together. Rejoice together. So what is he telling us? That the Torah tells us that for 12 months, it's a new marriage, and we know a new marriage takes time, to develop. Sometimes we think that happiness and love is something, as some people say, love at first sight, right? There is this excitement, there's this ahava, this love, this happiness that's there, where it's a little bit, you could say, superficial. It's what I feel at this moment. But is it really about the other person? We spoke about this last week a little bit, right? Have we done this together? Sometimes ahava, love, has to be developed. That's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. What does it say about Yitzchak? The first time it mentions ahava in the Torah, Yitzchak and Rivka, it says first they got married, and after they got married, Yitzchak loved Rivka. Right? It doesn't say Yitzchak loved Rivka and therefore they got married. No, first they got married, then he loved her. Because love, true love that lasts, is love that grows together. Sometimes I think about a wedding. You see the bride and the groom standing under the chuppah. Are they happy? Hope so. Of course they're happy, right? They get starting a new life together. Very excited. Couldn't wait for this day. And then you have the parents. The parents who are also standing under the chuppah. They're also happy. But it's such a different type of happiness. The happiness of the young bride and groom is a happiness that's it's very, very, very much felt. It's very passionate and on fire. And it's almost like the happiness of like, oh, we're starting this new life together. I love my spouse so much. I go crazy over her, right? The parents, their love, their happiness is so much more deep rooted. It's like the satisfaction of 20, 30, 40 years of raising a child together, seeing the child grow from a little toddler to go out to school and through school to college and adulthood and become the person that they are, and now they're finally getting married. That type of happiness is so much, maybe it's not as passionate, but it's so much deeper and maybe even more real, you could say, because it's something that took time to develop. They say this. They did a study once. The study was they took 20 people, 20 random people. They brought them into a room, and they showed them 20 pieces of art. Yeah, on the wall, 20 different pieces of art. Each one was numbered. They got a pen and a paper, and they said from 1 to 20, 1 being your most favorite, 20 being your least favorite. I want you to rate each of these pieces of art from 1 to 20. Your most favorite to the least favorite. That's what they did. Took 20 pieces of art. Each one wrote down whatever they felt is their most favorite and least favorite. Okay, they gave in their papers. Then the people doing the study, they took random pieces of art, these 20 pieces of art, and they gave each one their a piece of art randomly. Here, Jill, you can have this piece of art, right? Each person walked home with one of those pieces of art, and they had them in their house. Okay. It was a few years later that they were all called back to continue the second phase of this study. And they asked them to bring back their piece of art, and they had the same 20 pieces of art on the wall. I'm sure a lot of them probably didn't remember exactly how they rated them a few years before. And then they asked them again, here's a blank piece of paper, here's a pen. I want you to rate these 20 pieces of art from 1 to 20. What did they find? They found that each person, that one piece of art that they had in their house that they now owned, that one always went up a notch, either 1, 2, right? Suddenly, that art was more favorable in their eyes. Maybe it wasn't number one, but it was if 3 years ago I rated that piece of art as number six, now it was five or four, right? And the point was that when something is yours, it grows on you. Just because it's yours, therefore, after time, you start liking it more because it's yours. And I think that the same is true with marriage as well. You're married. Now that you're married, the love and the happiness develops. It becomes more real because you're committed. Once you're committed, then allow it to grow. So this is what the Targum Yonatan ben Uziel says. V'simach, you want to be happy for the year. How are you happy? V'simach im ishtoi. Rejoice, be happy with your wife. Together. And that brings true happiness. And that brings true love. So that's one interpretation or in translation. But then we have the onkelos. Onkelos, just one little word changes the meaning. Onkelos says, "V'simach es ishtoi" means, it's in Aramaic, but he says, "V'yachte yas itzei." You should rejoice. You should rejoice your wife. In other words, you should make your wife happy. Make your spouse happy. So, not rejoice, be happy together, but make the other one happy. And Rashi says, the leading commentary, we know Rashi. Rashi says that the unklos is the correct. He sides with this translation, interpretation. This is the correct interpretation. And the one who translates it like Yonatan ben Uziel, you should rejoice with your wife, Toyahu is making a mistake. This is what Rashi says, that if you translate this like Yonatan ben Uziel translates it, Toyahu, you're making a mistake. This is what Rashi says. It says the unklos is the correct. Make your spouse happy. Now it's interesting because you're making a mistake. I mean, there's different ways of interpreting it. Yonatan ben Uziel is the translation that was accepted. It's printed in the Chumash. I mean, he wasn't just a little kid, translating. Rashi is okay to choose one over the other. Fine, I get that. But to say that if you choose the other translation that has a source in this commentary, to say that it's making a mistake. So I saw something very interesting. Rashi is not saying that it's an incorrect translation. What Rashi is saying is it's an incorrect method. You're not going to be successful. Rashi is saying like this: you want to have a happy life. You want to fulfill the simach. You want to fulfill the simach, to rejoice with your wife. It's not going to happen on its own. You know how it happens? It only happens if the simach es ishtoi. If your approach is, I'm here not to be happy. I'm here to make the other person happy. Then you'll be happy. If your attitude going into this is, well, I want to be happy. I need someone in my life to make me happy. I'm looking for happiness. You're not going to find it because you're going to be so self-absorbed. And whatever you're doing is this going to bring me happiness? It's hard. Happiness comes when you're not thinking about yourself. Think about the other person. You'll be happy. You're at a wedding, right? You're at your child's wedding. You're happy? Of course you're happy. You're rejoicing. You're so excited about the wedding. But if someone stopped you and said, hey, tell me, are you happy right now? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm at the wedding. Like, I'm not thinking about myself right now. I'm thinking about, I'm again like absorbed in this whole wedding excitement. I'm not thinking about myself. Am I happy? Am I not happy? How am I feeling about this? The more I'm thinking about myself, I can't enjoy the wedding. I'm lost in the wedding. Then I'm happy. After the wedding, I can think back, said, wow, I was really happy. I wasn't even thinking about myself. I was just thinking about my child, my spouse, my parent, whatever, right? But others. And that is true happiness. The less you're thinking about yourself. What does it say? If someone's depressed, what should they do? Help someone else. Give some charity. Do a favor to someone else. Helping someone else, making someone else happy, that really makes you happy. So if you're going in, Rashi says, I'm only here because I want to be happy. I want to be happy with my wife. Toyahu, you're making a mistake. It's not going to happen. But if you want that to happen, Rashi says, V'simach es ishtoi. Make her happy. If you're making her happy, you'll also be happy. Then you'll be able to rejoice together if your focus is on the other. Yes.
Okay, so what happens? Like I know someone who, that was the thing, making their spouse happy. But what happens is after a few years, they find they can like, and so they get burnt out trying to make that other person happy. And they finally shut down. Like, do you do it anymore? So, and
Saying that it doesn't always work.
right.
Right. So the thing is like this. A healthy marriage is when both of the spouses are on the same page. I used to complain. I used to say, when I just got married, we were living in Crown Heights, and we used to have different talks throughout the year. People talking about shalom bayit, marriage tips, and things like that. So, but it used to be the men and the women were separate, right? So the husband used to go to one talk, and then a week later, the wife used to go, but they were going to different people, right? There were different people speaking, and I said, everyone has their own little take of how to bring happiness and peace into the home, right? Really, the spouses have to hear from the same person. So even if you want to do it separate for whatever, men should go, but it should be the same person, the same instructor, giving the same ideas. You can tailor it for the wives and tailor it for the husbands, but like this, the husband and the wife are both on the same page because they both heard it from the same mentor. But if you're hearing it from different people and everyone has their own little ideas, right? So the point is that if husband and wife are both on the same page, and they're both healthy mentally, emotionally, then generally these things work. Now, of course, sometimes it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Maybe they're not on the same page. They have different understandings and visions of what marriage is, and what type of home they want to build. I mean, there definitely are differences in many people's minds of what they want in life, right? And some people are emotionally unhealthy, that they're maybe not able to open up, or they're not able to do certain things. And for that, sometimes you need a surgery. Sometimes you need to go to the doctor. Sometimes you need someone out from an outsider to step in to work things out. And sometimes we're not able to work things out, right? As we said, right before this, we have the mitzvah of divorce. In other words, sometimes things don't work out. It's not 100% success rate, but there's a much higher chance of success when we do it right. So it's like someone says, well, why do we need doctors? We should just all eat healthy and exercise and live healthy lives. We don't need doctors. No, we need doctors because there are emergencies. Things happen. And even if we are healthy, things still happen. Now, the chances of it happening are a lot less when we're healthy, right? So a healthy marriage should work. It has a higher chance of working. Does it always work? Not necessarily, right? And sometimes you need intervention, and intervention could help. Many times it does, sometimes it doesn't, right?
Okay.
But the idea is, if you want to enhance your marriage, if you want to enhance the relationship, the Torah tells us, or I think what Rashi is telling us is, if we're focusing on I want happiness, you may find it temporarily. But if you're focusing on I want to make the other person happy, then you'll probably be a lot happier long term.
But isn't it okay to want to be married also?
Of course, you want to make yourself happy. Well, what is our attitude? How are we going about it? Right? In other words, I mean, thinking about things that I appreciate in marriage, or do I think about things that the other person appreciates? Now, naturally, if two people are healthy, it's like the mirror image, where if you do something, they're probably going to feel that and do it back, right? So if you come and show a lot of love to the other person, they're naturally, if they're a healthy person, going to bestow that on you as well. So that's generally the way it works. Again, sometimes some people have to be told. Some people, hey, by the way, this is really, what should be done. There may need some external intervention, but this is the general idea. So this is what Rashi is telling us, that this simach. I mean, I thought it was fascinating because you can almost like gloss over it. You have two interpretations. We're talking about a word. Is it visimach or visamach? Is it that you should make a person happy, or is it that you should rejoice with them? Right? Thinking about the other person all the time is really what it's about. They say there's this great rabbi in Israel, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, one of the great um, uh, rabbis in Israel the last few years. So he lived to grew old together with his spouse, and after his wife passed away, so his children were helping him out, and his children made him a salad. They asked him, "Should we make you the salad that mommy always used to make for you?" He says, "Well, I don't really like that salad. You can make a different salad." So you don't like that salad, but every day, mommy made it for you, and you ate it. He says, "I ate it because she made it for me." Right? So really just thinking about the feelings, how the other person feels, and just right, that's really what marriage is all about. Now, when we're talking about marriage, what comes to mind is obviously our spouses, our relationships, but most importantly, or as importantly, is our relationship with God, with Hashem. Because we also compare our relation with God like a marriage, right? We're told that when God gave us the Torah on Mount Sinai, it's almost like a nisuin. It was like the day of our wedding, Yom Chatunasai. The day of our wedding was the day of Matan Torah. It's also a relationship, and a lot of the rules of relationship in marriage apply to our relationship with God. The idea of not thinking about ourselves, thinking about Him, thinking about God, and then yes, we will also benefit from it, but that we're not in it for the benefits. We're not in it for the reward. We're in it just because this is what Hashem wants. That's also true with our relationship with Hashem. And coming now, we're standing in the month of Elul as we prepare for the high holidays, prepare for Rosh Hashanah. We know that the month of Elul is really a time when we have to enhance our relationship with Hashem. So we know that the word Elul, the Hebrew word Elul, is an acronym for numerous things. And one of them, perhaps most famously, it is Ani lidodi vidodi li. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. And where does this come from? It comes from King Solomon, that says the story um, Shir Hashirim, where there is this woman who goes out to the vineyard and meets this really handsome, great guy, and she is supposed to meet him there, and he doesn't show up, and she's very depressed, very sad, and she's like complaining. He says, "My I am to my beloved is to me, and I am to him, but he's not here." And it gets late at night, so she goes home, and she's sad and she's upset. And suddenly, as she's laying down in bed, there's a knock on the door. Who is it? It's him. And he says, "Now you're coming. I already got undressed. I'm ready in bed. It's over." And he says, "No, I want to come in. Open up." And he puts his hand into the keyhole or whatever, tries opening it up to the inside. And he says, "Ani ledoidi li." I am to my beloved. My beloved is to me. And the story goes where she opens up and he's not there, right? The story continues. But one of the things that he mentions is he says that you are my, he's knocking on the door and he says, "You are my beloved and you are my sister." He calls her, "You're my sister." And some of the commentaries ask, sister. They're not sisters. They're getting married, right? They're in this relationship. Rayosi, my beloved, I get that. But sister, why sister? So it's explained that what's unique about a sister? Sister is flesh and blood, right? Same DNA, same blood, right? Blood relative. So we have a relationship with our sister, right? I'm talking about someone who has a good relationship with their sister. Do I love my sister? I love her. I'll do anything for my sister. Am I thinking about my sister every day? Do I feel my heart pounding when I think about my sister? No, not necessarily. So, do I feel the excitement when I think about my spouse? I should, right? A good relationship, that's right. You feel that. But the sister, in a way, is even closer to you because it's who you are. It's part of you. It's an extension of you. So it's explained that these two expressions, beloved, which is like say a spouse, and a sister, describe two different types of relationships. The beloved describes the passionate relationship. Now, where does passion come from? When it's not you, when it's something a little bit outside of you, right? Something that you don't have all the time, right? Something that you have all the time, you get bored of it, right? But something that is new, it's different, it's foreign a little bit to you, you get excited about it, right? It's different, right? Last week I was in Mexico. I went to do a bris in Mexico, right? So I've never been to Mexico before. So is Mexico exciting? Until you ask. If you ask local Mexicans, whatever, this is life, right? This, but someone that's never been there before, oh, this is interesting, this is different. Wow, look at the street, look at this, look at right. Everything's different, right? Because it's a little different, there's a little excitement to it. But when it's routine, when it's normal, when it's regular, it's not so exciting, right? So when you meet someone who is not part of your family, someone who's it's a little bit different from you, right? Oh, you get excited. So there's more of a passionate type of love to that person. That's one type of love. Then you have a sister. You have a type of relationship where it's so deep that even when you're fighting, you feel connected, right? And you could be living across the globe. Perhaps you haven't seen the person or even spoken to the person for years and years, but you feel connected, and you would truly do, crazy things just for your sibling. Why? Because there's just that deeper, like intrinsic connection you have with them, right? Not as passionate, but it's maybe more real and more anchored. And that's what this beloved person is coming to this woman and saying that you're not only my beloved, you're also my sister. In other words, spouses have to realize that their relationship is not only this foreign type of relationship where it's not me and it's a passionate type of relationship, but it also has to be, we have to realize this idea, as we know, that spouses are really two halves of one soul. It is really an extension of you. It's your other half, literally, according to Kabbalah, which is one soul that was divided in half, male and female, born to male and female people, perhaps living in different cities and far away from each other, but they're really one soul that was divided in half. So when we marry, we're marrying our bashert, meaning we're marrying someone who's really our other half. It's like a sister. So that's what the person is saying, that you're my beloved, but you're also my sister. That means I have this intrinsic connection to you. And therefore, think about the other, because the other is really an extension of you. And this is the month of Elul. Our relationship with Hashem, we have to realize it's like a sister. Yes, we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's excitement and there's passion and there's a feeling of love. Ultimately, it's achoisi. God, we are an extension of you. We are bound together intrinsically. We can never leave. We have to just bring that out, to the forefront. To conclude with the story that I read about a rabbi in Ukraine, Rabbi Nachum Ehrentraut, who he lives in a city which I can't really pronounce. I know during the war there was a lot of still going on, but at the beginning of the war, the name of his city came up a lot. Different issues with the Russian bombing. But right before the war, a few years ago, someone comes into his office and he's complaining about his marriage. He said it's just not going well. It's not going well. We have this issue with her. He's complaining about his wife. This issue with her, that issue with her. It's really not going well. We're actually discussing and thinking about divorce. It's that bad. And the rabbi, whatever, guidance he was able to give. He tried to help out a little bit here and there. And then a few days later, the Rabbi Ehrentreu traveled to New York. And while he was in New York, he was thinking about this man who came to his office. And he said, you know what? I want to give him a gift. I want to buy him a gift. So he went to a Judaica store and he in Crown Heights, and he said he wants to buy a nice talis bag with his name on it to give him as a gift. So they gave him different options. So he actually said, you know what, I want to buy a few options, take it back, and let him choose which one he likes. So he bought, today they have these nice modern leather, velvet, all these different type of designs. He bought a few options. And while he was there, the salesperson in the store says, why don't you take this one for free? What's this one? This is an older bag. It says someone came in a few days ago to buy a new bag, and he left us his old bag. You have nothing to do with it. Just take it. It'll come to you, good use. Just take it. I don't need it. I want to get a nice one. Just take it with you. So kind of, just like put into his hand. He comes back to Ukraine with like 3 or 4 nice modern bags, and he has this older one as well. He goes to this person and says, I was thinking about you. I was in New York. I wanted to buy you a gift. I want to give you a talis bag. Here, choose. Which talis bag do you want? So he looks at the older one. He said, I want that one. So you sure? This is like old. They gave it to me. I just put it out. I wasn't really serious about this one. This is a nice one. Buy something nice. He said, no, I like the old. I like the vintage look. I just like it. It was used before. I want that. So he said, okay. So he takes the older bag. A few weeks later, this man comes to Rabbi Ehrentreu and says, you don't believe it happened. I took this bag and I gave it to like a seamstress to like fix it up a little bit, to fix the zipper, or whatever, to work on it. And she comes back to me. She says that within the seam, there was actually a little pocket, and there's this letter written in Hebrew that was tucked into this talis bag. So he brings the letter to Rabbi Ehrentreu and says, read this. What is this? He opens it up. It's a letter from the Rebbe, written in 1982. And the letter was written to a couple who evidently was having marriage issues. And the Rebbe writes a long letter giving them blessings for peace at home, shalom bayit, happiness in the home, and happiness between each other. And the Rebbe emphasizes that we should feel how you're doing this b'tzavta, doing this together, you and her, or I'm not sure who was written to, maybe it was written to both, the two of you doing this together, you're married, you're 2 halves of one soul, all that language in this letter. And this is what he gets right after, a few weeks after he spoke to the rabbi about his issues. And I hope the end of the story is that they lived happily ever after with lots of peace in the home and lots of shalom bayis and a beautiful marriage. But that's really the idea. The idea over here is 1 year is when it's all new, to allow this ahava, this love, and this happiness to develop. It doesn't have to be before we get married, but now that we are married, let it grow. Let it grow on you. Let it do this together. Focus on each other, not focusing on ourselves. And that's what Rashi says. If you want to have true simcha in marriage, don't focus on yourself being happy. Because then you'll be toya, then you're making a mistake. Focus on making the other person happy. Making the other person happy, then you'll be happy as well. So that's my little thoughts for this week's Parsha. Thank you for joining us. Have a Shavua Tov. And quick announcement about next week.